Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert are podcasting.
Yes, we are. We're live.
We are. And poor Vanessa's got a little bit of a sore throat going.
So a little sore throat. So I'm not as animated
as normal.
And I apologize, but don't worry. The podcast was recorded when I was more animated. So You just have to bear with me for a couple more minutes and then get to the real stuff.
Yeah, we'll be off and running.
Yeah.
So we're super stoked for today's guest, Jay Ferruggia. He's been around for a long time in the fitness industry. He's 2 years older than me, but he's basically been doing this since he was 18.
Yeah.
And not just dabbling, but full force into the whole thing.
Full commitment, yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. Mm-hmm. He's in the strength and conditioning world, he's one of those names. That's
definitely.
You know what I mean? It's it's not like, everybody knows who Arnold Schwarzenegger is,
right.
Even outside of the fitness industry. But when you step into the fitness industry and you throw down the name Jay Ferruggia, everybody knows.
Everybody knows him. Yeah, he's been in the game for a long time, but he's also been a respected player in the game for a long time. And I think that's the difference, is that he's had staying power because he has so much great stuff to offer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really does. And I've been following Jay for a long time. I can't even remember when the first article that he wrote popped up, but it just resonated immediately. And it's something that we talk about a little bit in the podcast, but we have very similar philosophies when it comes to strength and conditioning and kind of parsing out the pieces that are super important and really just distilling what you need to know, in order to be able to survive, and then what do you need to be able to thrive. It's different than survive.
Survive and thrive.
Thrive in the industry, and it's just cool. It's obvious that what he's putting down, people are picking up.
Totally.
Because he's been doing this, like I said, for a minute, and continues to just see super awesome results in this stuff. And he's not just a fitness expert. I mean, at the end of the day, he's doing a lot of coaching for folks around entrepreneurship and leadership and just how to be and how to show up. We talk about it a little bit in the podcast, and it's super inspiring stuff. And I was pretty pumped to have him on the show and get a chance to talk to him about this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's such a nice person too. Him and his wife, Jen, are just really sweet and just really present people. And I think, when you're in this industry, a lot of times it's hard because you can't really tell who the person behind the person is. Yeah. And it's always really refreshing when you meet people that are truly who they seem like online and really are authentic the way that they come across online. So it's really cool. They're really sweet people. Yeah.
Yeah. The person is the person. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he is the curator and host of Renegade Radio podcast, which has been around since 2014. And we were on it a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. Great interviewer, great show, covers a broad swath in this industry. I mean, obviously lots of fitness folks in there, but lots of entrepreneurs and lots of stuff like that going on. So there's a little something for everybody over there. So he's been a consultant and a coach for professional athletes, Hollywood entertainers, law enforcement, military personnel. Over the last 2 decades, he helped more than 2,000 regular men make a life-changing transformation. And he's also been featured in Men's Fitness, Men's Health, Muscle and Fitness, MMA Sports, Maximum Fitness, Details, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, the Huffington Post, CBS, and ESPN. So he's all over the place.
He is, yeah.
He's been generating high-quality content for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So it shows.
It shows, yeah, absolutely.
It's all popping around here. So one of the things that, and we'll talk about it more in the podcast, but one of the things that's kind of cool in his niche that he's carved out for himself is this wrestling world. And so he has clients who are the top of their game in the WWE, like straight up WrestleMania status, you know, which is cool because it's not something that orbits into our world all that often. But these are high level athletes that are functioning at the absolute top of their game, and it's a cool spot to kind of hear him talk about getting into.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I just can't follow my own programming. And Jay is actually the guy that I follow. Yeah. So I'm fully committed in his programming. I buy into his philosophy on this stuff 100%. And it's just been honestly, it's been a game changer to have somebody whose programming you can just follow and be stoked on.
Yeah, especially for someone like you who you get why it's so good.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I get why this is so good. And I mean, not that you have to be as highly educated about it as you do. It's really like for the average person, for the average consumer as well. But I think it's especially cool for you because you're like, yes, this is good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and this is the thing that's so, I don't know. It's such a weird thing because it's almost like knowing too much about this stuff makes it difficult. You know what I mean? You're like,
exactly.
Boy, well, this is really cool, except, man, why did he put this in here? You know, and so like all of this other programming that I've followed from, you know, totally qualified and super squared away coaches, there's always something in there that I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, you know? And that's just not the case with Jay and his programming. It's just super solid stuff. And to be fair, I like fit his demographic perfectly. I mean, he's really, with the exception of, you know, his high performance athletes, he's really carved out a niche in like the men over 35 market, you know, which that's me.
Yep. 100%. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, exactly. So this was a super cool podcast for me. It was a great conversation. I think you guys will get a lot out of it. And without further ado, here's Jay. And we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Jay.
Thanks for having me. It's like to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting. We've been trying to get you here for a minute.
Long time. Yeah.
We finally lured you in.
Yeah. Busy lives, man. You got lots of people doing lots of things. It's tough to make things intersect. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, stoked you made it.
So there's a lot of folks out there who are familiar with your work, and obviously we're big fans, but it'd be great if you just in your own words gave the audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to be, you know, where you are at this point in your life. Get us up to speed, so to speak.
Sure, yeah. I got into fitness as a kid. I was skinny and weak and insecure and beat up and not that athletic and all that kind of stuff, you know, so... And we were just talking about pro wrestling. I've always been obsessed with pro wrestling, so I would watch guys like Rick Rude and Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, and Hercules Hernandez every Saturday morning on TV. And I was like, man, I want to be jacked like those guys. And then my cousin Christine started dating a dude named Eric Wida, and he was a pro wrestler, not with WWE. He was like in a smaller federation. But all of a sudden, there's like a pro wrestler around all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is amazing. So I started lifting because obviously he was lifting. He was humongous. And that was really what got me into it. And then throughout high school and college, I just became obsessed with it. And then college, started interning in the weight room, started learning more about it, reading everything I could get my hands on. And then I switched my major from communications over to exercise science. And then I started training people. I got sick, so I had to transfer back home and take a semester off. And during that semester, I was 19. I got my first personal trainer certification and started training people that year at 19.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Just went right for it.
25 years ago.
Yeah. So once you clued into that you like the strength and conditioning path, you just were all in.
I was all in, yeah. I was obsessed with it. I loved it. And I originally started training just regular people, you know, but I had this desire to really train athletes. Like as a kid, I wasn't the best athlete, but I was a huge sports fan. And so I loved Walter Payton. And so the first exercise I actually did regularly was hill sprints because of Walter Payton.
Yeah.
And then I started lifting. And then as, you know, I was kind of past, when I got really into it, I was like a sophomore in college. So sports were kind of done for me. I wasn't playing sports at the time, just recreationally, you know, what is the like pickup league in college called? I'm drawing a blank.
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, intramural.
There you go. Yeah. I was like, red shirt? No.
Yeah. But I was like, man, I wish I started doing this when I was younger because now I see how much better I could have been, how much higher I could have jumped and faster I could have ran and been better all around. So I just wanted to really train athletes. So it was probably like maybe 1 or 2 years training normal people. And then my dad's friend was a really good athlete at the time. He was only 12 or 13, and he was a football player and a wrestler. And so he was like, hey, do you think Jay could train Mike? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So he was my first athlete, and then within a few months, he referred me people. And again, this is like 3 years ago now, and Mike and I are still close friends to this day, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so Mike referred me all these other athletes, and then it just blew up from there, where I would have, every day after school, I would have between eventually got up to like 50 to 70 kids coming in from high school every day.
Wow.
And those guys went on to play college ball.
Yeah.
So they would come back in the winter break, in the summer, then they would bring me guys back. Then those guys went on to become pros. So then they brought me guys back. So that was just kind of how it went for like the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah. That's crazy, though. I mean, that's like the ultimate word of mouth marketing situation. You're like, this works. Here, go to this guy. So what sports did you play? What was your main jam?
Basketball was my main
Basketball.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So if folks can't tell, you're obviously from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Got that little jersey in there, but but I want to know what.
It's funny, if I go back, it's more so.
Oh, yeah.
We went back. Have you guys met my friend Jay Jablonski?
I don't think so.
So we went back, and then I was with somebody. I was with Luca. You guys know Luca Hocevar?
I've seen him on your Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were in New York. Me and Luca were in New York recently, and 2 days into it, he goes, "Man, you're talking with way stronger New York accent than normal."
Yeah.
I start cursing more.
It happens. I don't fully understand what it is that happens, but I mean, I'm from California. I grew up here. People are always like, "Where are you from?" Because the little town that I grew up in that's got a pretty thick like country twang,
Yeah.
And Vanessa can always tell. I've been talking to one of my buddies, Mike, from home. Because she'll come home. She's like, "Have you been talking to Mike today?" And it's like, you just flip right back into it.
Oh, totally.
There's some kind of like relatability piece that.
Yeah. I even have a friend named John who I talk to. I probably talk to him once a week, and Jen will always know, because all of a sudden, within 10 minutes, I'm talking like I'm on The Sopranos. What's wrong with that fucking guy? You fucking kidding me? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you like that. What's the matter with you?
So what brought you to California then?
I did 36 winters in Jersey, and I was like, man, I hate cold weather with a passion. And I was just like, I got to get out. I think where we live is the best place in the world.
I agree.
I came here a few times, and I was like, man, I got to get out here. I got to eventually get out here. And I wanted to do it for a while, but it would have been a risk, and I wasn't making money online, so it would have been,
a big leap.
Yeah. So eventually, we were making enough money online, and I just knew I had to. And I was actually, it's funny, we've been here 8 years now. I was going to move here either 2 or 3 years prior to that, before I met Jen. I met Jen in September. I was planning to move here that October. And then I met Jen, and so we ended up staying for either 2 or 3 more years, because she was teaching, and she didn't want to just move, but she wanted to get tenured and everything there.
Right.
So
So you took a little pause.
Yeah. Let it develop. So it's an interesting thing, because now obviously fitness on the internet is like how probably the vast majority of people consume it. You know what I mean? It's like you go online and you get your workouts or whatever the thing is, and then maybe you go to a gym, but you're probably interacting somehow online. Yeah. So what was that transition like for you to go from primarily training people in person to then start to shift this stuff online, and like how did that go down for you?
So in 2001, I'd been training people since '94. I just started writing, and it was because Alan Cosgrove. Do you guys know Alan?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Alan was like, I would exchange ideas with him. And at the time, he was like, man, nobody's saying this. Nobody's putting this out there. Nobody's thinking like this. Why don't you start writing? And so the word blog didn't exist. So I started writing on like a crappy little website wizard site that I created myself. And then in 2003, I started selling my first ebook in online programming. And I think there were 6 people doing it at the time. Like nobody was doing it. And then, so I built up a pretty decent following, just putting stuff out regularly. And then eventually I got into magazines and whatnot. And then Alan was kind enough. He was stepping down from the hard gainer column at Men's Fitness. So he was like, you should give it to Jay, who'd be even better than me. So I got that. And then, I kind of just saw like, well, I could reach so many more people, obviously, than I can in the gym. So just continued to pump out. I mean, at this point, I've written thousands of articles. Like I write stuff every day for the longest time. And then just... Friends like Craig Ballantyne and whatnot helped me kind of monetize stuff more and understand, selling online and all that. So,
because now it's like you can't swing a dead cat without hitting like a marketing system for selling something online, But in the early days, it was literally just trying to figure it out, which,
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, there was less, like the signal to noise ratio was a little better, right? So
sure.
if people are like looking for legit content, it's easier to find. Where now, man, you really got to do some searching. You're like, wait, who is this person? What are they talking about? Read 3 more articles. You're like, oh, nope, and kind of move through it.
Yeah, that's what's hard for people who don't know a ton about fitness is like, how do you know what to believe or who to trust anymore? Like, there's so many people that just have great genetics and a great body, and they all of a sudden they're selling stuff online a week later. It's like, I don't know if that's the best.
That's actually what I really wanted to dive into with all the noise that's out there. How do you sort of differentiate yourself from all of the noise and help people be better at making informed decisions and own the information for themselves? And what can you tell the listeners out there are like, what's a good way for them to decipher for themselves what's legit and what's not?
I mean, it's so challenging. And honestly, because I'm redoing a couple of my sites now, like I was explaining to you guys before some stuff. And so one of the companies we hired were like, they asked me that same question, like, oh, why should somebody buy your stuff? And I was like, man, I could get into like the marketing stuff, but I was like, honestly, I hope it's because I've been doing this for 25 years and I have a track record of putting out good stuff and the people I've worked with. And, I mean, that's the main thing. And so for me, I don't believe in, like, I think so many of the things with the fitness industry today are wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I think, and that's challenging to tell people that everything you see on Instagram and on a Nike commercial and everything is wrong.
Right.
But, and it's hard to break that down for people to understand that. But, like, you have to understand that training is a stressor. So many people are like, and because it's the beginning of the year, so I'm like, oh, I want to go hard and do this. I'm like, like, okay, well, but you only sleep 5 hours a night. You're super stressed at work. You work 80 hours a week. Your diet's not that great. So if you go hard 5 to 7 days a week, that's just another stressor that's going to destroy you.
Right.
So I try to teach a more realistic, sustainable approach that doesn't destroy you, doesn't burn you out. It's very counterintuitive. It's the opposite of what a lot of people are doing. But you got to think long term. And the reality is, like, if someone starts January 1st and says, I want to lose 30 pounds, they will have more results in 4 to 6 weeks going super hard, training 7 days a week than with my approach. But then what about 4 to 6 months, 4 to 6 years, 4 to 6 decades? That's the thing that makes the difference is thinking longevity, not destroying your joints, your hormonal system, your endocrine system, your central nervous system. It's like, you got to take all that into account too.
Totally.
And be smarter about it.
Consistency over time. Every time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's really the tricky piece too, right? Is that selling, well, I mean, not just like literally selling, but convincing or pitching this idea of long-term sustainability. It's tough, It's like you got all these competing priorities of, life. And then now what you're telling me is that I have to do this forever.
Right.
And it's going to take me 6 months to get to a point where I can really see a difference versus, these guys are offering this whole thing in 21 days,
Right.
6-minute abs.
Right. And I'm not 100% bashing all that. Like, if that's what it takes to get people in, because I get it. Like, if I wanted to do something that wasn't in my comfort zone, like if I wanted to learn how to play an instrument or something, if you promised me I could get from here to here in 30 days, I'm more likely to try it than if you said, all right, in 6 years, you'll be fluent. So I get that. Like, I get the psychology of that. It's just the, beyond that, beyond the 21 days, the 28 days, like, how is this sustainable and how is this realistic,
Right.
Yeah, totally.
So how do you help people make it sustainable and realistic?
So the first thing I say is, like, you have to really enjoy it and love it. So I'm never, like, if you told me that Pilates was the greatest thing of all time and I'm going to look like Arnold and everything, I'm just never going to do it. Like, I just like lifting weights, what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to enjoy it. And fitness doesn't just mean going inside the gym. Like, if you like hiking and just doing some push-ups every 100 yards or something, like, cool, that's awesome. Just do something, like. So, and I used to be more dogmatic about, you got to do this and you got to do that. And even some of the science that we can geek out on. We were just talking about HRV and everything before. Like, most people, doesn't matter. Just go out and do something you enjoy, break a sweat, as long as it's not injurious in any way, I think that's the... And people come to me who haven't trained in a long time, like, oh, it's New Year's, what should I do? I want to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm like, no, do not do that. Do 2 sets of body weight squats, 2 sets of push-ups, and 2 sets of, like, inverted or band rows 3 days a week. And do that consistently for a few weeks. And then let's stack something on that,
Right.
Like, it's crazy to take on this huge thing. It's just never going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and especially as you start to get a little bit older, it's like where even when you were younger, you may have been able to do it, it may not have stuck, and you might have got burned out. Man, when I hit the 40 mark, it was like, go hard and get injured.
Yeah.
Like, that was like exactly like, oh yeah, you can go do that. You can put that weight over your head, but you're not going to put anything else over your head for like 2 weeks.
Right.
So it's like this measured approach. It's tough. It's really hard to I think for the individual to sort of get that in their head, and because you have to sort of admit at some point that you're like, shit, I can't do what I used to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
this takes longer than it used to take. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing wrong? You're like, man, it's just the way it is. I think.
Totally. Yeah. And there's two sides to that coin. So exactly what you said, that you have to understand when you're getting older and accept your limitations. But then, and I'm sure you would have probably argued what I did the other day with a guy our age. He was like, man, I'm getting old. I can't do. And he's the same age. Like, I'm 44. How old are you?
42, yeah.
So he's the same age, and he's like, I can't do this anymore or that anymore. And he's like, it's true what they say. I was like, no, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
You can sauna every day. You can optimize your sleep. You can optimize your nutrition. You can train smarter.
Yeah.
So it's that balance, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't make excuses. You can't think you're Superman. There's somewhere in there's that balance.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, what it forces people to do is really look at their lifestyle. And a lot of
Yeah.
times when you really put their feet to the fire, they realize, like, I haven't created my life in a way that creates space for this, And so it's like, you're asking me to get 8 hours of sleep. That's half the work night that I put in,
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hardest thing, is that people try to find a workaround to realizing that their life just isn't set up for like what it takes to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And, which is the biggest challenge. And so I'm curious, when you have clients that have that aha moment, like, but wait, Jay, I can't sleep 8 hours. Like, that's not possible for me.
Right.
How do you work with them to start massaging those new habits and creating their lifestyle in a new way?
So in the, if you guys were, Richard Koch, the 80-20 principle and stuff like that, his books, he says you should have 7 habits for life. And so when I would start working with somebody, I would keep in mind, like, what are those 7 we could form? Just form one at a time. But, none of us are perfect with that, right? So
totally.
there's something we all don't have time for, but we could fix it. So sometimes you just need outside eyes. Like, I might be able to point it out to you, and you can point it out to me, where, we have those blind spots, and you're like, dude, you don't have to do X, Y, Z. Do an 80-20, do less stuff, and now you have the time to get more sleep and to spend 30 minutes in the sauna and to go get a massage once a week or whatever.
Right.
It's like everybody has a lot of time.
Right.
It's just like, how do you get more done? Have less to do.
Right.
Because most stuff isn't important,
Yeah.
And it's fun. And believe me, like I was saying before, I've been hypocritical and done this, taking on too much stuff. But if you're really strict about it, and even if you hire a coach, I think it's good for everyone to hire a coach to look at all the stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
And for them to say, because you need accountability and outside eyes to say, well, these things you shouldn't even do. Like, this is a waste of time.
Right.
So,
or this isn't a priority right now.
Yeah.
Once you get these things shored up, maybe you can add that back in later. But it's
Exactly.
important to get those fundamentals really shored up. Yeah, I totally.
Before, I don't want to say exactly because I'm not sure what year it was, but the word priority was never plural.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just
funny.
one thing.
Yeah. I never noticed that, but you're totally right.
Yeah.
It's like you got to have, totally. You got to get your priority in line.
Yeah.
Now
Everything's a priority,
right.
nothing is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, how do you
So
chunk it out?
you've mentioned this before when we were on your podcast, and you've talked about this publicly a lot, that you used to be really shy, and you just mentioned it even earlier. So how did you overcome that? Because you would never guess that now. When you walk in the room, you're full of energy, the eye contact's there, like you're fully engaged.
Yeah.
How did you come to be this person?
Yeah. So, well, thank you, because that's always a great compliment, because I worked really hard on that. So it was for 30 plus years. That's how it was, because I told myself, which I think a lot of people do, hey, this is how I grew up, so I'm XYZ, or I have this belief or whatever.
Yeah.
And you write that narrative, and then it becomes true. So I'm shy. I just can't do it.
Right.
But when you think about it, it's kind of insane. Like, that would be like saying, well, I can't drive. No, you've just never taken driving classes, taken your driving. I can't play the piano. I can't now, but I could work on it and learn how to play the piano, or I can work on getting stronger and going from 1 push-up to 20. So I kind of had that realization. And then I just had this awareness. I was like, man, everywhere I go, I see people who are the way I want to be. Like, they're engaging, they're charismatic, they're funny, they can talk to people, they light up the room. And then I'm sitting over here in the corner. I was like, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. This is terrible. What am I doing? But I was like, I can't just do it tomorrow. So I got to work on it. So I started prioritizing it like I would anything else. Started reading a ton of books about that kind of stuff. And then just small habits on a daily basis. Okay, like how can I just make eye contact with more people? How can I engage people? Like if I'm in the elevator, normally everyone's looking down. So how could I say, hey, how are you? Just small steps like that. And then eventually that just snowballs over time. And then can I get more compliments?
Yeah.
And then this was huge. So I would, because we use visualization for sports and stuff like that, right? So I would start to do that. So if I was going, I don't want to sound like cocky, but I don't do it as much anymore because it's more natural and comfortable. But if this was 5 years ago and I was coming over, on the way over, I'd visualize, all right, how do I want to interact when I get there? What bad habits do I want to avoid? And I would do that before parties, before going anywhere, any kind of event. Like, here's what I want to do. Here's how I want to interact. And then I'll review it afterwards. Okay, like, did I not give enough time to Vanessa because I was distracted by that? Or did I make sure I spent enough time with Adam?
Right.
And, that subject made me uncomfortable, so I was looking down. So I would review it. Just like Kobe would review game film or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like, okay, how do I get better next time? And it's funny because Jen knows, even to this day, I'll do the review. I don't have to mentally prepare as much, but when we leave something, Jen knows for the first 5 to 10 minutes on the ride back, it's dead silence. We don't talk because I'm just going through and making sure, like, okay, did I do this or that? And because, you know, sometimes now, like, all of us are places where we know a lot of people and you want, like, sometimes people come up to you and whatever, and you want to make sure you give enough attention to everybody and make everyone feel good. And it's hard to always do that, you know?
Sure, yeah.
So,
yeah, that's really cool because I think one of the things you said in there that I just want to hover on is that it's more natural for you now.
Yeah.
And so it is a little bit of like a fake it till you make it, right? You just literally fake, you pretend. It's almost like acting as though you are the new Jay that is not shy.
Right.
And I totally get that. I grew up really shy and people are always like, oh, you're shy, you know, because that can be very silly. And I have all of that because I think we all do. Totally. We have it inside of us, but we're just afraid. We're just nervous about how to let it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And believe me, there's certain things that I'm still shy and awkward and insecure about. And I'm like, but I try to be aware of and identify it, like, oh man, now I got to work on that. You know?
Totally.
Yeah, there it is. But that's, I mean, it just goes to show that, like, fundamentally identifying that there's a problem, or, I mean, not necessarily a problem, but something you want to change.
Yeah.
And then just like coming up with a slow and incremental process to solve it, and then actually following through with it works, like, across the board.
Yeah.
You know,
this is what
like,
I love about the health industry is that I think that if you actually start to look at any system, and oftentimes we're looking at our health and fitness, you start to realize, okay, there's a system here. If I follow steps A through Z, I get this outcome. And I think that one of the beautiful things about being part of this is that you realize it applies to all areas of your life.
Yeah.
It applies to your relationships, to your money, to your everything. Like these systems work. And so I think that's one of the most inspiring things about like having that recognition of like, oh, I can work on these things.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And that's what I'm hearing from you. You're just like, if you see a spot that is not shored up for you, you just find a system.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I realized too that for so many years I would try to get better as a trainer and strength coach, which you should. Like no matter what you do, if you own a restaurant, if you're a tailor, get better at your craft, of course. And then I learned how to market those skills, which you should do that too. So I studied business a lot. But at the end of the day, my people skills were way behind where they need to be, and that's the number one thing. Like that's the most important thing is building relationships. So, and I will also, what I tell people now is you have to take the reins. So the ball's in your court. So if I'm out somewhere and I see somebody I want to talk to, I'm not going to sit there and wait for them to come to talk to me. I'm going to look for an opening. I'm going to go talk to them about something, figure out where we have some commonality that we could talk about, and then, you know, it's like, hey, great meeting you. Let's hang out sometime. All right, see you. And then you never see anyone again, right? So I'm always going to take my phone out. I'm not going to give them a business card. I'm going to get their info, and I'm going to set the date. And within 48 hours, they're going to get some kind of message from me. Hey, great meeting you, whatever. If there was like a recommendation I could give them, you should read this book, or you should meet my buddy, an introduction. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to set the date when we're going to meet up again. Like, let's grab coffee on Tuesday at 2:30, or let's train next Friday, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do that because everybody's so busy and everybody won't do it. Yeah. So if you want to build great relationships and a great network, it's got to be on you. Like nobody's coming to your door and saying, "Hey, well, let's hang out." You know, you got to do that kind of stuff.
I love that
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and especially that sets you orders of magnitude above average in LA.
Yeah.
It's like the LA, I'm never going to see you again. It's like, hey man, let's hang out, and you're like, That's not going to happen. It's like, how is it even possible?
Yeah.
Even if everybody's on the west side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And anytime you can add value first to a relationship, it's going to be better. Like,
Totally.
There's a better chance. So,
and it feels good.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, it's not even like, to me, it feels more easy to add value to someone than to say, like, can you add value for me?
Right.
Like, it feels better, right?
Yeah,
You're just like, yeah, okay, cool. What can I do for you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Huh. I like it. So we've talked a little bit about like the fitness industry and kind of what's the things you pointed out that are kind of wrong with it from your perspective. And I think a lot of people would share that. But I mean, you've been in this for a long time, and like, what keeps you coming back? Like, what keeps you fired up and motivated and like stoked on the industry in general?
I think for so many years nowadays, I think it's cool that we have. Well, egotistically, I think it's cool that some of the things I've been saying for 25 years are now being validated by science. But I think it's cool, like the level of science we have now and the access to information. That's really cool and exciting. And so many years ago, we didn't know. Like, you just go into the gym and you train to get bigger, faster, stronger. But there's so many things we didn't know, and all the other stuff you can do. And, like we're talking about HRV and your nutrition and recovery. So that's cool. I love learning about new stuff like that. I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I know so many of the top experts in the world, so I'm always learning from them. I'm always around people smarter than me. That's exciting. And then being older now, being 44, and still being able to be fairly strong and mobile and athletic is pretty cool, because I remember when I was training guys, like when I was 23 or 28, I was training guys my age now. They're in their 40s. They're like, oh, wait till you get to my age. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to show you. And so I feel kind of like a sense of pride now.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to continue to do this. And now I have a renewed passion, even recently, for athletes that are getting older. Like, okay, how can we stop you from doing all these things and extend your career by a couple of years? Like, that's really exciting to me.
Yeah.
So recently I've been working with guys in their late 30s, early 40s. And, how can we get you, like, if we could get one of these guys 1 or 2 more years, that's exciting. Even if it's just a weekend warrior, like, that means a lot to be able to play flag football or volleyball pain-free on the weekend. So I appreciate the value of that. So, my training has gotten a lot smarter, and there's always more to learn. So it keeps me excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think it was, not sure where he said it. It was in an interview somewhere, but Kelly Slater was talking about his training. And he's like, what is he, 48 maybe? Something like that?
He's up there, yeah.
46
he's still
or 48,
on the world,
something like that.
Tour,
and he's still like competing against 18-year-olds, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
and crushing it. And like one of his philosophies is I just don't overtrain.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to wear my body out. He's like, I only have so many paddles in me.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like,
You say, I wish people realize that. Well, you do only have so many reps, so many steps, so many throws.
breaths.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so make them really good and don't take them very often, or it's like the minimum effective dose, right?
Yeah. When guys get to that level and they understand that, that's super exciting to hear. Like the WWE champion right now is Daniel Bryan, and he's 37, but he's been doing this for like 20 years, So I was working with him in the gym recently, and he totally gets that. He's like, man, I don't want to be tired. I don't want to be fatigued. I don't want to injure myself. Like, he's thinking about longevity and everything, and that's exciting to work with people like that.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. Like, and you don't realize it until you get to be a certain age or whatever.
It comes knocking.
Yeah, you always just think you're going to have all the skills you have forever and ever.
Yeah.
You're just always going to be that way.
Yeah.
I feel that way about partying, too. I always thought I'd be so good at it.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
It's harder now.
It is harder. Yeah.
So we were talking about, you have several businesses that you run and lots of irons in the fire in the irons. But you were talking about scaling that back. And I'd really love for you to share just the thought process about, being more focused on one thing and being less scatterbrained and less, having too many things in the air. Let's just, give us this 411 on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the 80-20 principle is universal. I've always been a big fan, well, not always, but in recent years, a big fan of simplicity and minimalism. Two of my favorite books are The One Thing and Essentialism. But you guys know what it's like now. Like, you're distracted, you're an entrepreneur, you want to try to do other things.
Yeah.
And I think the worst thing that happens is when you try to do something else, just because maybe you've been doing the same thing for 20 plus years, you're like, and then you have some success in it. You're like, oh, maybe I could be really good at this, So you start trying to do this, and then, we look at outliers, or at least I do. You look at The Rock, and you're like, well, if The Rock can do all that, I can do that too.
Sure.
Yeah, look at this guy.
He's crushing it.
Yeah.
And he eats sushi every Sunday. What's going on?
Right. So I tried to do that. Like I just did one thing for 20 years, and then I don't know what it was, but I was just kind of like, I want to start doing some other things. And it was kind of early in my journey of personal development too, where I was addressing that stuff we talked about. So I was like, and I think in retrospect, maybe there's a little bit of a mistake where I had success with stuff. I got fairly good at it. It made a difference for me. So I was like, oh, maybe I should make it part of my business and start to monetize it. But that doesn't always have to be the case.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like some things can just be for you.
Yeah. Like I'm obsessed with old school hip hop and know more about it than most people. It doesn't mean I should write a book about it and teach a course about old school hip hop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Although you might want to make a rap video.
Yeah.
I feel like this could be good.
I certainly do. Yeah. I have for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. I can see this coming together.
Yeah. So I went from having basically one business to like another business and then another business, and it just got to be just overwhelming, and super like, because then without that focus and clarity, it's really hard to tell people who work for you or on your team what you want to do, because it's all over the place. And then what happens a lot of times is you become less effective as a leader, because I'm like, nobody knows what to do,
right?
Because we're doing 4 things now instead of 1 thing, and then I'm too busy to teach you how to do all this new stuff we're taking on all the time.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'll just do it, which is super inefficient.
Yep.
That's the worst.
Yep.
And it just becomes a disaster. And then, I mean, the reality is there are outliers like The Rock or Arnold, or people who can do a lot of things well. I've realized that that's not me. I don't want to do that. I think most people will be more successful if they just do one thing, focus on it, and then do other stuff in your free time, that are your passions and hobbies and whatnot. So I'm trying to scale back. Because for 25 years, my main one thing has been, strength and conditioning and fitness. So I'm dialing back to just diving all in on that this year and scaling back the other stuff. And I know I'll have way less stress and anxiety from doing that.
What about someone on the flip side of it, though? So say you're out there and you want to transition your career. Maybe you're working in a field that you don't love and you'd love to get into the health and fitness industry, or you'd love to get into wellness. How do you talk to somebody about straddling that in-between space where you still have to have your side hustle, right? You have to have your main gig, and then you want to transition into this new way of being. What advice do you give people in that space?
Yeah, so I had a coaching client last year named Brian, and he was making really good money on Wall Street and everything, and he said, I want to transition over to health and wellness, which I thought was really cool, awesome. So he built up a $30,000 side hustle by just then you just have to focus, work is on cruise control now. You can't study other stuff about that. You're just going to study. So we went through Jason Phillips' nutrition certification, and John Berardi's precision nutrition, learned a ton about it, and just reads and is obsessed with it all the time. So he works, his job, comes home, and then that's the time to dedicate to your side hustle. So that's when you have to be good about 80-20ing stuff and not wasting time doing so much stuff. You have work, you have your time with your family, then you got to not waste time scrolling through Instagram, not waste time doing stupid stuff for work. Now you have an hour or two to work on your side hustle, and that's what you have to do. And I don't advocate, some guys are like, oh, you only sleep 3 hours and do your side hustle at 3 a.m. That's
right.
Would be stupid for us as fitness and health and wellness professionals to say that.
Right.
Do your side hustle for an hour or two at night and get a reasonable amount of sleep. But you can do it if you prioritize and spend time on it. And obviously, you do have to learn about marketing and whatnot, but I think get good at this like Brian did, and then start to learn about marketing and whatnot. That could be a whole podcast.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah. I'm curious if you ever talk somebody out of it. Do you ever have someone that comes to you and you're like, no, don't do it. Your gig's too good.
A lot. And Luca loves when I do that. So if we're at events and people come up and they ask me for advice sometimes, because I am still super Jersey and brutally honest a lot of times.
Yeah.
So guys will come up to me and Luca will be like, hey, Jay, I'm thinking about doing this. And I'm like, definitely don't do that. That's actually the worst. Then, so one guy came up and he was telling me about his idea for a podcast. And I was like, oh, that's really good. And now he didn't have any following or anything. So I said, here's what I would do. Make your podcast an audio blog. Do it 5 to 7 days a week and make it 5 to 10 minutes. And that's it. And he's like, well, I want to interview all people. I was like, no, don't do that, because then you're competing with everyone. It's just your audio blog. And then I talked to him for a little while. And then he goes, all right, so when can I get you on? I go, I'm not coming on.
Yeah,
I'm never coming on. Do what I just said. That's the thing to do.
You missed it. You missed it entirely. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where and Luca loves telling those stories about when guys come up and say, hey, what do you think about this? But no, definitely don't do that. That's not going to work.
That's not the one. Yeah, because it's tricky, you know. I mean, I know, and we do this with each other. We're fortunate that like we can bounce things off each other pretty solidly, and like it's pretty brutally honest. Like what goes on.
We're not from Jersey, but it's so brutal.
It's, you know, we've known each other for a long time. But you need that like really critical feedback because man, you know, you think about something. At least this is the way it works for me, and I'm sure there's others that this is how it is. But you have this idea. And then you shelve it for a little while, but then it like trickles back in when maybe you're driving, you're stuck in traffic or whatever, and then it starts rolling, and it's like, oh yeah, no, it's just like this self-fulfilling like forward feedback loop of like, oh yeah, this is a really good idea, you know. And so you've got some like attachment to it by the time you actually get it out into the world, you know. So then tear the Band-Aid off, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about any of those. How did I not think about like these very obvious like reasons why this wouldn't be a good idea or how you could pivot it. Yeah, that's interesting. So I want to shift just a little bit. I mean, we've been talking, about all kinds of things here on the fitness side and then just like in this sort of development entrepreneurial side. But I want to definitely get some of your thoughts on nutrition out to the folks because like you said, you've been in this world for a long time and you've seen a lot of different changes from, old school 6 meals a day, 2 grams of protein per pound, you know what I mean? And like nothing else matters. And it's all about bulk and cut. And it's all, so you've seen all of this different stuff come kind of through the timeline. So I'm curious, like what your thoughts are on nutrition now and what kind of has led you to that.
So I did everything. Everything you could possibly think of. I tried all through the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And it's funny because it kind of brings you back to where I'm at now. Like I'm not a strong proponent of keto or paleo or anything. It's just like I've come full circle to be super simple in my nutrition recommendations.
Yeah.
Like just eat real food. I think paleo is a good guideline for most people, for the most part. Real food. I think most people tracking macros is a little obsessive. Sure, if you have to get ready for a roll or a show or a weigh-in, of course, probably do it then. But it's one of those things where now if you constantly have an app on your phone, you're obsessing about, like, that's not healthy either, Yeah. So I think real food, decent amount of healthy fats, and then protein, but not like, bodybuilder days, like we're saying, like a moderate amount of protein. I think if people eat 3-4 meals a day, like none of that's really makes that big of a difference. Intermittent fasting, I think, is good for certain people. Terrible for other people. Which
like who?
If you're real high-strung, adrenaline, cortisol-driven, like it's going to exacerbate that, make that much worse. You can have way worse anxiety.
Yep.
And then now there's been recent studies about how, and a lot of people talking about how it's better to do, like if you're going to have an 8-hour feeding window, 9 to 5 is better than 12 to 8.
Right.
It's more natural, like, because we would have started to go to bed when the sun went down. From a social perspective, not the best. Like, I'm not going to stop eating at 5 and just hang out. We all go out, you know what I mean? But, if you could find some kind of healthy balance in there. But for me, I think most people can do a 12-hour fast easily. So I definitely recommend that. And then if you go 14 to 16, that just depends on a variety of factors. But I think just healthy food, real food, like stuff that doesn't come in a box or a bag.
Totally.
And then carbs just based on your activity, your body fat level, your tolerance,
Yeah.
Do you have folks monitor their food intake, meaning track their macros and calories for a while to get a handle on what they actually normally eat?
So that's a great question. It depends. Like if it's someone who is just starting out and they're going from eating Burger King, I would say absolutely not. Let's just clean it up.
Sure, yeah.
If it's someone who's in great shape and is like, man, I got to cut 8 pounds for this roll or something, then we have to, So it's kind of opposite ends of the coin. It just depends, really.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it could be so helpful for people who've never, obviously, if you've got quality control issues and that's like low-hanging fruit. But it is super helpful, I think, for some folks to just have that sense of like, well, how many calories do you eat in a day? And if the answer is, I have no idea, it might be helpful to know. Like, actually, I easily eat 3,000 and I'm 5'2". It turns out maybe that might have something to do with why my results are here.
I think it's super important for a situation like that. And then a lot of times I think it just depends on your personality.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
I have a friend who's super jacked and active, and he never tracks, but
Right.
everyone around him was tracking. So he started tracking, and I saw him recently put it in his phone. I was like, what happened? He's like, I don't know. Everyone's telling me it's just driving me insane. I was like, bro, you're like 8% body fat, jacked out of your mind. Who even cares?
It's
Yeah.
working. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important. Well, it's cool because I think it's just, we love having folks on that say it in their own way, but I mean, so many people are saying the same thing, right? It's like,
exactly.
just eat real food, and if it works for you, do it. If it doesn't, don't. All of this just regular ass advice that most people just need to hear it from different voices for it to hit.
Totally.
Yeah. The other side of the tracking thing too, like that we see, and I think this is something that, I mean, I think it's starting to come back a little bit, especially like in the intermittent fasting talks about things. But people undereat too. Like I have
totally.
so many people undereat, and like when we go in, and especially if they're intermittent fasting, because let's face it, if you're going to try to jam 3,000 calories worth of food into 8 hours, you're going to be eating. It's like it's what you're going to do for 8 hours, to get that stuff done. And man, there's so many people when we get them in, like, all right, look, let's take a look at this, let's track this stuff out. And you got a guy that's my size eating 1,200 calories a day. He's like, I don't know, I'm cold all the time, and I don't have a lot of energy to work out. And you're like, yeah, dude, you eat less than Vanessa, so you need to just pack this stuff in.
I do eat a lot, though, to be fair.
But, you're pint size.
Yeah.
So, I guess there's always a window or a right time for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, sometimes I have to be reminded that people undereat. I mean, because I could eat 3,000 calories in a half hour at Sunday brunch. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's all good,
yeah. But it's true, though. So many people do.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're freezing. They're not losing any weight. They're wondering what's going on.
Yeah. No energy to work out. Like, these workouts are, too hard, or maybe I need to, I don't know. What's a good pre-workout? That's always like step one. What do you take for pre-workouts? I'm like, nothing. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of protein, but certainly no, super amped, ramp jack, whatever, with lightning bolts on it. Like, don't do that. If that's necessary, something else is going on.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Jay, you love hip hop. And I saw recently you did a little post about why it inspires you and how it has influenced who you've become. I'd love for you to share about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So again, I was always insecure and didn't believe in myself. So what better way to reprogram your brain than to listen to that kind of stuff every morning and hear DMC say, I'm the king, and, Nas and Ice Cube and all these people talk about how great they are, because that's hip-hop. Like, Indochio and started battling in the streets, and you just talk about how great you are.
Right.
And I'm the world's greatest, and no rapper can rap quite like I can. They'll take a muscle-bound man and put his face in the sand. And so I was like, so I'd listen to that every day. So that was definitely part of it for me that helped me overcome that.
Yeah.
And still to this day, listen to that all the time. All the time. Like, when I'm ever walking into something, I'm listening to that on the way over just to get myself kind of in that mindset and everything. So, I mean, it influenced that, the belief in yourself, but also kind of, I think, like, some of my political and world views and stuff like that. Just,
Yeah.
That's
cool.
I think it's cool. I think it is so, especially in white culture, like to pump yourself up or to talk well about yourself or to be like, I'm a badass. Like that doesn't happen as often. We're not socialized into that.
Right.
So I think it's one of the things that's so attractive about hip hop and that culture is that it's like permission to celebrate yourself or to like, just be all about yourself, which is, it's a tricky thing because if we are that way, or if, most people just feel like, oh, okay, you're being an egotistical asshole now. Like, so I could see how that would be like, I don't know, how that would definitely pump you up, especially in your adolescence, like give you that extra. That's cool.
Well, it should be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I always think about that scene from Office Space. I remember that movie, right? And when one of the guys, he's like skinny little IT dude with a tie and glasses, and he's listening to, I'm pretty sure it was DMX, right? And he's driving into work, and he's just jamming it in his like 84 Toyota Corolla or whatever. And like in the movie, he stops at a stop sign and he's throwing his hands and just getting into the song, and like some black guys pull up next to him in the car next to him, and he's like, oh, and he turns it down and is just like gets super sheepish about it. And it's like, it's interesting to point that out in the movie because I think that's real. People are like, oh shit, I shouldn't be.
I'm not allowed to be that way.
I'm not allowed to be super excited about this music. Yeah, that's too bad.
Or about myself.
Or about myself.
Yeah, totally. So what are you most excited about moving forward, whether it's personal or in the industry or whatever it is? What are you most looking forward to in the next couple years?
I kind of love everything that is currently going on. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me sometimes to have like this grand 5-year plan or 10-year plan. Like when I just got back from this trip this morning. And I always struggle with the balances. I'm sure a lot of people do. Like I heard one of my friends say that everyone you know who's a super high achiever is perpetually dissatisfied. And I was like, man, that sucks. I don't want that. But I get it because I have a little bit of that, right? So like I did things this weekend that I would have dreamed about and that I would have paid about. And I can't believe it. But I didn't do it at this next level. So part of me is like, oh, shit, I should have done a little better. And I should have been doing this and this. And that's kind of always a little bit of the battle. Like no matter what happens, no matter who reaches out to me or what experience I have, it's amazing. I celebrate it. And I'm like, I wish it was this much better. I should have done this much better. And I think some of that's healthy. Like you push yourself. Some of it's not healthy at all. So you try to find the balance. But when I was flying home, I was just like, man, I cannot believe this is my life right now. I'm so grateful for this. I can't believe the people that I get to spend time with, the things I get to do, where I live. So I try not to get, because I'll drive myself insane too if I think too much about the big 5 to 10 year plan. And I think a lot of people do that too, where people are like, well, what's my purpose? How am I going to change the world? How am I going to be like Martin Luther King? And it's like, man, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like if you can just be a good person, be happy, be healthy, be present, make people feel good. I think that's amazing. And for me, so like relationships are the most important thing now. So the highlight of this weekend, even though professionally, like there was cool things that happened and whatnot, it was just spending time with people I love and then I get to come home and spend time with people I love. And I think that's the most important thing. So
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, drop the mic.
So if these weren't on these boom arms.
Yeah. So where can people who don't know where to find you already find more about your strength and conditioning, all of the businesses you're about to pare down?
Well, if you just go to j.fit, jay.fit, that's my main site. And then if you go to renegaderadiopodcast.com, that's the podcast. And then on Instagram, I am at Ferruggia.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
Yeah, this was super cool. Dude, I'm sure people got a ton out of this. Like you're a dynamic speaker and you got cool shit to say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And you have that nice East Coast skin. I was like, you're 44? You could just tell. We're the Californians. Our skin's all weathered. I'm like, hey, you might not have liked those winters, but they did well for your skin.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being with us. Bye.
Bye. And that's a wrap, folks. Hope you guys got something out of that. We certainly did. And be sure to check out everything Jay's got going on over at his spot. And if you are so inclined, if you like this podcast, if you like podcasts like this, if you just like Adam and Vanessa on the radio, so to speak, you could just swing down and leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. That would be fantastic. If you already have, thank you very much. All right, folks, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
And I don't think I would be me without you being you. Your direction, expression, intention has taken